This is a story about love, about art, and above all, about community. And it starts in a place you probably won't expect. In 1890s Nebraska, and a newspaper article about baseball. You see, at this time, in the infancy of the major leagues, the sport was much less institutionalized, leaving some teams not in any competitive leagues and having very few fixtures to look forward to when the season came around. And therefore, especially in the Midwest of the USA, there was not really much enthusiasm to be had among baseball fans. And the Nebraska-based newspaper, the Omaha Daily Bee, reported exactly this on the 2nd of February, 1890. Something I've managed to track down due to an insanely thorough and accessible archive of old newspapers that they have online. Why am I telling you this? Because this article was the first known recorded use of the word fan being used as an abbreviated version of fanatic to mean a person who exhibits strong interest or admiration for something or somebody. Now, I don't feel like I really need to tell you this, but in the time since then, this word has become more and more popularized to the point where 135 years later, we just consider it to be a basic piece of English vocab, spawning off multiple portmanteaus as well, including fanzine or fan magazine, fan girl or fan who's a girl, or fan boy, a fan who's a boy, and also fan club, which by definition describes an organised group of fans who then often devote considerable time and resources to support someone or something. A term that became very popular in the following decades according to its growth on Google's Ngram database, but has since dropped off and been replaced by two catchier, now more popular terms, fan base, and more notably, fandom, the combination of fan and kingdom. And the chances are, if you're watching this video, you're probably familiar with the word fandom and also the word fan base, or two words. It's unclear how many words there are. The internet can't decide on how many words there are. And for all intents and purposes, these words mean the same thing. Definitionally, there aren't too many differences to be found, with the word fandom being defined, at least on Wikipedia, as a subculture of composed fans characterized by a feeling of camaraderie with others who share a common interest. And the word fanbase is Wikipedia redirecting you to the fandom Wikipedia page. Whether it's Trekkies, proper noun for a group of Star Trek fans, Swifties or Taylor Swift fans, Whovians, the Doctor Who fans, or in one case, literally just the fandom, stylized with a PH for Dan and Phil fans, the concept of fandom is believed to have existed for up to 150 years, with Adrienne Wadewitz, a feminist scholar in 18th century literature, claiming to have identified the first fandom subculture as the Janeites, the network of Jane Austen stans who found their prime directive, Austen idolatry, around 1870. And the Oxford Dictionary citing the earliest evidence for the word fandom was in 1903, only like 13 years after the word fan was first coined, and decades before the terms fan club or fan base came about. And while I feel like people are going to have different personal interpretations of what these words mean to them, seemingly they're just synonyms of one another. Except here's the thing, I don't think that's the case. Yes, this might be true according to their original definitions, but I believe the word fandom has evolved to take on this deeper, more culturally stigmatized meaning. Something that goes so far down that I've realized while writing this video, even I, someone who's been immersed in fandom culture for a good part of the last 10 years, have my own internalized prejudices towards this word. So I want to start again. And to define what a fandom really is, I want to ask, what does it mean to be in a fandom? And while I do plan on reflecting on my own experiences in this video, I also understand that this isn't a one-size-fits-all sort of situation. Everyone will have different experiences, and fandoms come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and different varieties. So throughout my research of this video, I sat down with and talked to various people with various different perspectives on being involved in a fandom community. Firstly, my girlfriend Poppy spoke to me about her experience with the Vampire Diaries fandom when she was a teenager. I also got to chat with online content creator CPK, who's a good friend of mine and notably was part of the Dream SMP, one of the biggest fandoms in the world during the pandemic. And finally, two of my wonderful patrons, Tori and Kayla from the USA and Canada, shared their experiences from being in the Star Wars, Marvel, Lord of the Rings, Disney, Pixar, Harry Potter, and even the Seamus Gorman fandom. For those of you who are new, that's me. Yes, when I was younger, better looking, popular, about 8 years ago, I used to have a genuine online Fandom. There was an actual community of people with my names in their handles, using photos of me as their profile pictures, making me fan art, sending me fan mail, writing fan fictions about me. And if I do say so myself, this gives me a pretty unique perspective on this. I'm not just talking from the perspective of someone who's been involved in fandom, but also someone who had a fandom about themselves. Which I just, looking back on it, find to be one of the most fascinating things ever, because there were these genuine, real people spending their time creating and making things for me to see, or probably more accurately, to feel this sense of belonging in a community that was built for me. Not by me, but for me. And while I don't think I'll ever really be able to comprehend that, and sometimes I did find it too intrusive into my own personal life, even if I did lean into it at times, there was a small but genuine Seamus Gorman fandom. Something that was completely outside of the videos that made me popular. I think you could have been a part of it without even watching all of them. I think there were some people that did that, to be honest. It was just a community of people creating and sharing things with people with similar interests as them. And that is what a fandom now is, in my opinion. But my fandom, like many, ended one day. I don't know what day, but I guess there was a day in time where the last fan account posted their last post, and from that moment on, the Seamus Gorman fandom has been dead. Gone too soon. It's never too late to reactivate those accounts, guys. Anyway, with that said, I still do have a fan base, an audience of people who watch my videos and like and comment and watch all the way through my ad reads when I do them, but it's not even close to being the same thing. This is the story of the death of fandom, or whatever I decide to call this video when I upload it. But before we get any further, I need to tell you about today's sponsor, Rocket Money. If you haven't heard of Rocket Money, it's an all-in-one personal finance app that will help you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and just all around help you manage your money better. And it's so simple to use. You link it up to your bank account and it'll automatically find all of your subscriptions and all of your bills, and then find you the best rates for your bills, and you can start canceling subscriptions with a few clicks of a button. And they have helped customers save up to $740 when using all the premium features of the app. And I'm willing to bet everyone watching this video will have some grey area, even if they consider themselves a master of budgeting, that Rocket Money will be able to find. Like, for example, you know how many streaming services there are right now? Do you actually know how many of them you're subscribed to? Because with Rocket Money, you can immediately find out and start unsubscribing to the ones that you haven't watched anything on for years. Just like that, you've saved money. And if you want to join me and over 5 million members, you can go to my link at rocketmoney.com/Seamus, linked in the description down below, to start for free. And with that, let's get back into the story of fandom. Because while, as we've covered, the history of fandom culture dates back to over 100 years ago, it's taken decades upon decades of growth for it to reach the mainstream in the way it has. I think one of the first signs of it becoming more common and normalized in society, for lack of a better term, was in the 60s, where one of, if not the most famous example of fandom culture, a comic book convention, later to be called Comic-Con, took place in 1964. Now, if you haven't heard of Comic-Con before, it started out as a convention for comic book fans to meet up and hang out with, and in my experience get really drunk with other people with the same niche and nerdy interests as them. But following its exponential growth over the subsequent decades, it has become one of the biggest entertainment events in the world, with reportedly hundreds of thousands of people attending New York Comic-Con last year, the 3 MCM Comic-Cons in the UK attracting equally impressive numbers, and that's just specifically talking about Comic-Con and not mentioning other conventions for niche and nerdy interests like Anime Expo, Gamescom, VidCon, that all go on an annual basis and bring in masses of people. And I think this all shows that having a community of like-minded people is especially important because of how it creates a safe space for all of those involved. And to be honest, this isn't really a feature of fandom that applied to me so much. I mean, I'm not part of a marginalized community. I'm a very sociable person that never really kept my interests private. But I did find this was something that kept coming up with every person I spoke to for this video.
It was waking up to immediately go on your Twitter in the morning, log on and talk about the upcoming episode with your Polish friend Amy, who you'd only known from Twitter, who'd never met, but she was everything to you because she was also emailing Ian Somerhalder at 4 a.m. on the daily.
I felt a lot of shame, I think, internally, or dissonance between my being a woman and like loving all this weird like nerdy stuff, that I didn't see a lot of my girlfriends clicking with in the same way that I did.
Like some of these people might not have anyone who lives near them who are like, oh, I'm super into this thing. Like, you know, streamers are a perfect example. Like I have a pretty small UK audience, so like I'm just sort of chilling in the UK, right? But then if I go to an event in America or in like Europe, there can be loads of people there who are like, oh my God, like I love your stuff. Those people don't necessarily live near each other, and thanks to the internet and like the way fandoms work, they don't have to.
Yeah.
So when they go to an event and they find other people, like that's their safe space.
I come from a small town in Canada where not very many people have actually like gone that deep into Star Wars, into Lord of the Rings, into all of that stuff. So being a part of fandom really gave me a chance to share the joy that I had and I found in that story, and be able to connect with people that also had similar experiences, and then learn about people and really broaden my horizons of how other people think and act, because like we're looking at the same piece of media, but we're thinking and we're seeing different things. And so being able to see that and connect with people that way has been really cool.
And as is being alluded to, and to try and return to the narrative here about the rise of fandom, the ability to connect with people with the same niche interests as you got a lot easier in recent years with the accessibility of the internet. It started in small ways in the early ages of the internet, with people creating websites and forums to discuss the things they were interested in with people all over the world. And then came social media. It's the 2010s. There is now a way to broadcast and communicate your every thought with the world. No longer is living in a small town in the middle of nowhere an obstacle to getting into fandom, and thanks to the ability to be completely anonymous, even if you're forbidden due to some private or cultural reason, or embarrassed of something you're interested in, you can still join in with fandom under an alias. And that's not to necessarily say that all of this is a good thing. I think the more years go by, the more we see the negatives and dangers of these features of social media. But I just really feel like there was a time where social media worked perfectly. It made it easier to connect and talk to people who had the same interests as you, and you could really take pride in said interests. Almost as if the people at the top hadn't worked out a way to profit of it yet. You know, not to sound like an old man living in the past, but to look back on my own experience, I really do feel like that era of Tumblr, DeviantArt, Wattpad, and Stan Twitter was the peak of fandom culture.
I think there is something significant about the time period of like the 2010s up until like 2015, 2016. I think the Tumblr era was incredibly significant to this fan culture, because when I think of Tumblr, I think of like fan edits of like, you know, the kind of nerdy shows that I was watching, like Doctor Who, Walking Dead, The Vampire Diaries, all of that stuff. I was going to Tumblr and I was making like specific Tumblr pages for everything, and like, I don't know, I just feel like there was that culture.
Running an Instagram fan account was like probably the most competitive thing I'd done in my life up to that point. At like 15 years old, like the other girls, we were fighting for like attention, like from, you know, the other fans, from other fan accounts, from you. Like it was like, who can get the most attention, who can like create the most iconic thing, who can be like the moment.
Tweet a couple of times a hashtag of who I was shipping at the time. It was very much like hashtag Delana, hashtag Claraline, tweeting at the cast, trying to get them to notice me, trying to make some kind of worldwide or local trend, really get my name out there as, you know, the number one Vampire Diaries stan.
And I love that, like, I'm still in touch with a couple of the people that I met through that time, and like we never talk about our fan accounts anymore, but like I'm like, how's your new job, or like what are you up to, or like what are you doing this summer, and I've met up with some of them in person, and And I don't know, it's just like a really...
I always love hearing that. Ultimately, the too long didn't read explanation is that the difference between being a fan of something and being in the fandom was to do with the intensity of how you enjoyed it. If you're part of the fandom, you're not just consuming the content, but you're dedicating a large amount of your time to talking about it, building relationships, and adding your own creations and ideas to it.
I would say that a fan engages for fun, for a good time, maybe tunes into the episodes, you know, maybe talks about it in their free time. Being a part of the fandom was so much more. It was a culture, it was a lifestyle, it was a daily rhythm.
What does that even mean?
Those who get it. I'm sorry.
But I mean, obviously when we go to conventions and stuff, like one of the coolest things is like meeting people who like my content. And then like someone's be like, oh, I made you this. And it's like just a bracelet with my name on or something. And like, so that stuff's super cool. And I think one of the most fun parts about what I do is that it's so cool for me, not because I'm like, wow, they're giving me something, but because I'm like, they took their time and they were like, I want to make him something. I haven't done anything in my head, right? Like I literally am a man who plays video games on the internet, and they find enough solace in that to be like, I want to give him something. And like, no matter what that is, sometimes they've drawn a small picture or anything, like no matter what it is, it took them time. And so I'm so grateful for that.
I want to read a little thing that I wrote down.
Yeah, of course.
And had prepped for this. When I say fandom, I don't mean just liking a thing. I mean participating in the culture around it, creating art, writing fanfic, making theories, edits, playlists, memes, essays, hour-long YouTube videos. Fandom is what happens when the audience starts to play with the story instead of just watching it. It's where the credits roll, and then we say, now what if we did something completely unhinged?
We were out there like spider webbing, like all kinds of different theories about like where they could go next or where this person originated from or this and that, basically making it so much more than it actually is. Like you get 42 minutes a week, but we were pumping out, you know, concepts, theories, ideas.
And to reflect on my own experience here again, I feel like this is very representative of my journey with fandom as well. I feel like I discovered the Pixar theory in the somewhat primitive early days of YouTube, and I had my own ideas that I wanted to add to it, so I put them into words and put those words into videos. Before long, I was dedicating my entire week to immersing myself in the lore of the Pixar movies. While your average fan would probably remember The Incredibles fondly and consider it to be one of the greatest animated movies of all time, I had studied the ins and outs of Disc 2 from the DVD set and learned all of the power sets and backstories of every single superhero that Syndrome kills in that movie, and these characters do not appear in the movie other than that one scene where Mr. Incredible's going through the computer, and maybe they appear in Mr. Incredible's and Elastigirl's wedding. Yeah, I knew everything about all of them. There's maybe questions around my commitment due to the fact that I did dedicate times to learning and studying up about other fandoms to make videos on, because I tried to branch out to making videos about Harry Potter, Star Wars, Marvel, and just the wider Disney umbrella. But I still don't think that actually changes anything, as I was dedicated to all of these fandoms, and before long, this had become a full-time job for me. I was meeting new people because of this. I was meeting people who liked what I had to say. And honestly, I think what epitomizes how far fandom culture has come in this time is the fact that I, someone who built an audience on YouTube of fandom content, had a fandom of my own. Like, what in the meta of fandom inside of fandom is that? However, the existence of a fandom about me is slightly different to every other fandom that we've gone into detail about in this video. You see, I am real. I can assure you I'm real. I'm posting videos under my own name, and I am just a human being behind a camera. I'm telling you, beyond this screen, I am a real person. I swear I'm a real person. And if we just take a pause and take a second to think about a fandom, any fandom in the world, I just want you to think of one. I am certain there aren't many of you sitting there right now thinking of a sports team or franchise's fandom, almost as if there's this unwritten rule when it comes to the definition of fandom that says it mainly applies to fictional interests. While if you're in a fandom for a TV show, a movie, or even the Dream SMP, your obsession probably does extend to the real people involved with it, it is in its essence fictional. I will admit that the Dream SMP is a little bit of a grey area here, but I'm building to something, okay? Remember how I started this video telling you about 1800s Midwestern American baseball? Well, it's all about to tie together. You see, sports fans have existed for thousands of years at this point. There's evidence of sporting events being put on with huge attendances dating back to the ancient Greeks and the ancient Olympics, but probably going back even further than that. And even in more modern history, there is evidence of teams that have existed since the mid-1800s over various sports with fan bases. Yet, it was the fans of Jane Austen, being referred to as Janeites decades later, that were identified as the first fandom. And if we go back to the origins of the word fandom becoming popularized, specifically around the 1960s and the first Comic-Cons, it was again being used to refer to fans of fictional things, with Star Trek fans, or Trekkies, often being credited as the first modern-style fandom. But Star Trek first aired in 1966, meaning at the same time and pre-existing this is one of the biggest and most famous examples of fandom probably ever, with the Beatles fandom, or Beatlemaniacs. Yet, the Wikipedia page about Beatlemania avoids using the word fandom, describing it as the fanaticism surrounding the Beatles, and the word fandom only gets used once in this entire article, and it's a quote from 2017. If you compare this to the Trekkies page, the word fandom is used all over it. You see how many instances of the word fandom I'm highlighting for this graphic? This took ages to make, so you're gonna have to sit through it. And as I also said, there are articles online crediting Star Trek for basically inventing fandom. I know this might just sound like a minor linguistic thing, but I genuinely think this is evidence of a stigma around the word fandom due to its association with fictional things. And I realized that this extends to me. You see, I am a fan of a football team, Manchester United, unfortunately. Yet, I would never describe myself as in the Manchester United fandom. I've never heard anyone who's a fan of a sports team or franchise use that terminology before. It just sounds wrong. And in an attempt to try and convince myself that I'm not the problem here, I was like, but they're different, right? They're not the same thing. I even posted an Instagram poll to see if people agreed with me, and I kind of got a weird 50-50 split, which doesn't really help any point I'm going to make here because people are split on this completely. We defined being in a fandom as a collection of people coming together to participate in the culture around something. There's an element to making things and sharing things. Surely sports fandom is lacking these sort of creative elements. Except when you watch a game, you're in a community of people all watching the game together. There's a chance you're wearing your team's shirt, essentially cosplaying for said game. You're coming up with chants and singing songs for the players. I mean, today, there are even people making edits on TikTok and others who have built careers around talking about it, analyzing and making predictions in the same way that I made videos about Pixar or Disney or Harry Potter. Maybe there was a time where the definitions were different. I mean, even while writing this video, I can admit I've gone back and forth on what fandom really means more times than I can count. But I feel like maybe somewhat subconsciously, due to societal stereotypes, I believed that being a fan of a sports team, because it was real, was in some way different or maybe even superior to being someone who's just really into comic books. But in this social media age, it's more obvious than ever that they're all the same. There are people who are really into the NBA, people who are really into K-pop, people who are really into Pokemon, all just coexisting on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, barely interacting with each other. And when they do, while they probably all believe that their own interest is superior, I think there's an understanding that it's all the same. So much so that when you Google the definition of fandom today, the first example they provide in a sentence is my 17 years of sports fandom. I guess this is just my realization that I've become an old man stuck in my pre-internet fandom ways. And now it's just the all-encompassing term. Whether you be a fan of movies, TV shows, books, sports, comics, musicals, video games, Lego, trains, music, you'd probably call your fan base a fandom. now. And I just want to say, I genuinely found one of the most interesting parts when making this video was hearing people's stories about things they did in dedication to fandom, because it truly shows how much of an intense but also creative experience being in a fandom can be. And oftentimes it can lead to future hobbies, interests, and sometimes even careers.
My main platform was always Instagram. So using I got really into editing, making edits and photo edits and kind of photoshopping, which was interesting because that was like fandom art edits were my introduction to what turned into a really big creative hobby of mine for a big part of my life, which was photography.
I did my fair share of drawings.
We don't have to show your fan art on screen.
I think we have to because it's so bad. It's so funny. And I'm going to beg my mum to go into the attic and try and find it. Probably the most embarrassing stuff is that I used to write essays for myself on what episodes of the Vampire Diaries I thought were the best and why. And me and my friends used to write these essays and share them with each other, and even print them out, laminate them, and stick them up on our bedroom walls.
I went to TwitchCon and someone had cosplayed as my character from the Dream SMP, and not oh, they've put on fox ears and showed me I'm you. They had a full outfit. They made this giant staff thing that I had with a lantern hanging from it, and I think that's the most nuts part, is that the fandom side, because they're so dedicated and they love these characters and they love the people on the server so much, they're willing to spend their own time and money to create something, to then go to a place where other people who have created similar things are then all going to be there.
So I was really deep into, I loved the different legends, lore, different stuff like that, the EU, what they call it now. And so I would take Wikipedia pages, articles, and I'd print them out so then I could highlight and make notes on the paper of the Wikipedia articles, because I needed it physically. I needed to be able to visually see everything. And
I love that so much. I don't think I've always held this belief, but especially after speaking with everyone, I can really see how fandom is such a force for good in this world. Whether it be making fan art, fan fiction, or just shipping characters, it can have a real genuine positive influence on people's lives and potentially be a gateway to future creative hobbies and careers. And I think that's such a great thing. And while I believe it's without question the reach of social media has been a massive positive for fandom, especially when it comes to its exponential growth in recent years and helping niche fandoms become more and more popular, I also think, ironically, this thing that has helped popularize it so much has also created almost all of its biggest problems today, which has led to what I would consider to be the recent downfall in fandom. Because with its noticeable rise in popularity, more people have arrived realizing that you can profit off it. And I guess I should hold my hands up and include myself here. I have made money on YouTube from fandom-focused content. And on top of this, there are so many other stories of other people who have written fan fiction and gotten a book or a movie deal from it. So many artists today cite making fan art when they were a teenager as a launchpad for their career. And by no means do I think this is even remotely a bad thing on its own. But once there's a way to make money from it, come what I'm calling the pretenders. It starts with people making YouTube videos solely with the ambition of making money from it. And it gets followed up by people getting into things like fan art and fan fiction with the expectation that it's going to kickstart their career as an artist or a writer. And because of this, the audience's perception of these products change. You see, I used the word products there. Yeah, because of the success of a few people, suddenly these fan-created things get viewed as products, something to be reviewed and critiqued, when that was never what they were for. Fandoms have always just consisted of normal people pouring their hearts out into the void because they've fallen in love with a world and they need to create something that just doesn't exist yet. And they're doing it for free. Meanwhile, within these spaces, factions of people have come to believe that they're owed content. I mean, that's their end of the bargain. If they're going to show support for someone, they best be provided with the content they demand. And when they don't get their way, it can get ugly. All of this has also led to an overload of businesses that I feel like purely exist to profit off fandom culture as well, with Loot Crate probably being the shining example of this. A subscription box where you pay a fee every month and they send you a bunch of nerdy stuff, except you don't know if you're going to be interested in any of the stuff you're getting and whether it's even going to be worth the amount the box cost. But also, while we're just having a go at businesses that are here to just profit off fandom culture, I have to talk about the wiki hosting site, quite literally just called Fandom, because in its essence, it's a good idea. It hosts all the wiki sites that like Wikipedia aren't going to dedicate an entire page for, but oh my god, it has the most unusable interface, overloading you with adverts every time you use it, some of which are just videos that play out loud, but also, it just has no moderation over who can edit things. I literally just made an account, I signed up, confirmed my email, and I can go and edit whatever page I want and write whatever I want on whoever's pages I want. Anyway, sorry. My point is, when people start trying to profit off what were originally safe spaces, it's going to start turning people away. And because of this, small fandom spaces like my own have gone all but extinct online. But also, even the businesses are going down. Loot Crate went bust in 2019 and more wikis are departing fandom every year because of the issues I outlined. And it opens the question, why is the internet turning its back on fandom culture, causing this decline? And to start with myself and my own fandom, I don't think it actually really relates to it. I think the reason my fandom died, rest in peace, you guys know it's never too late to come back, was just due to the audience participating in it growing up. Now, I'm not trying to completely generalize here, but a large subset of my fandom, like many other fandoms, was teenage girls. And teenage girls have a lot of time on their hands, and when they become adults, they don't have that time on their hands. And you know, case in point, Tori, who was a teenage girl when she was in my fandom, but is an adult now, and I've been talking to her for this video.
Because it was like a very dramatic and like chaotic and competitive space, and like it was really fun, but it was really intense. I think it was like a very short-lived, like fiery flame that like it burned out, you know?
Yeah. But there can be many other different reasons for leaving a fandom, and pretty much everyone I spoke to has shared some sort of story about how they left behind this fandom that they dedicated almost all of their time to at one point.
To be fair, a lot of people don't realize this, but like the Dream SMP actually ended like officially. A lot of people finished up their storylines. You know, they had these things and everything happened. Like my character died in a big fight, and I'm not sure there was an official death of the fandom, but I feel like there's probably a relatively hard line a couple of months after the SMP finished where everyone was like, I think it's actually done.
It's a blend of me getting older and kind of shifting my interests. Like when I got to like 16 and 17, I started being really obsessed with skins, which if you know skins, you know it's a very different vibe to the Vampire Diaries. But also the show just got, like, no disrespect, it got kind of terrible towards the end, and I lost faith in it. And there are only so many times that I can like bully Julie Plec, the producer of the show, and send her emails about what a terrible job she's doing. I'm really sorry, Julie. That was not okay.
Sometimes you can still love and enjoy something, but find yourself falling out of love with the community around it. And this is something that I've experienced myself and spoken about in a video on my channel before with the Harry Potter fandom, where essentially, from my experience, I found the atmosphere around the fandom too competitive, and I felt like I was constantly having to prove my worth and how much I knew about it, and I was constantly getting into arguments, and all in all, it was making me like myself less, which unfortunately I think is becoming this all too common thing with these long-standing fandoms with growing populations in this social media era. The Star Wars fandom, which is not shy of controversy to say the least, being arguably a better example of this.
But I had to take myself out of the fandom spaces of Star Wars because it got toxic, because people just started fighting with each other. The fandom kind of got, I don't know if it's too big is the word, but just started too many people that have different opinions, and then they started fighting, and the toxicity, again, I just had to be like, okay, I still love this stuff, but I just have to pull myself out of the fandom of it because I can't enjoy the stuff without people telling me how terrible it is.
And I think we've kind of alluded to it here, but another thing with social media, especially when it comes to fandoms about real people, but also by extension the real people involved with fictional fandoms, it's not just the fandoms that exist on social media. The real people behind them are on it too. This imaginary barrier which maybe used to exist between fans and celebrities has just completely been knocked down. They can see what you say about them, you can message them, they can interact with you. And with that, let me introduce you to the new world of the parasocial relationship. Now, to be clear, parasocial relationships are not a new thing. The concept was first coined in a paper from 1956 by sociologists Donald Horton and R. Richard Wall, with some more recent researchers including Alyssa Termini believing that one-sided relationships have existed long before the invention of TV and radio in the form of political figures, gods and spirits. And I'm inclined to agree with this, especially when it comes to fiction, whether that be reading a book, playing a game, watching a movie. You are building parasocial relationships with the characters, whether you realize it or not, and the same applies when it comes to public figures and celebrities. The chances are you have opinions on all sorts of people who don't know you exist. Maybe even me. I hope you have a good opinion of me if you do have one. And with social media, the dynamic of the parasocial relationship has changed forever. Now you can message the person you have a parasocial relationship with. They might even reply. And while you may have an array of opinions about this person and think you know all there is to know about them, to them, you are just a name and a picture, which might not even be your real name or even a picture of you. And maybe they didn't even pay attention to your name and picture because they were just looking at what you sent in your message. Do you see the problems that can arise from something like this? Well, throughout this video, I've highlighted what I genuinely do believe are positive features of fandom culture, whether that be making fan art, fan fiction, or shipping people. It starts to get a little bit messy and less positive when it extends to the real people involved in fandom. I'll be willing to wager if you take a look at any fandom for a mainstream pop star, content creator, or even an actor, you will find people within that fandom who have made inappropriate fan art of them, intrusive fan fictions of them, potentially even shipping them with real people from their own real personal lives, which can mess with their real relationships. They are just people like us at the end of the day. And with the speed at which these fandoms have been growing online, the chances are you're sharing this community with people that you don't get on with and don't agree with, making your safe space a lot less safe.
I think people are a lot more apprehensive today than they were 5 or 10 years ago to like tie themselves to a fandom, especially big ones like Star Wars or Marvel or Taylor Swift, or because it's like you don't know all of the nuance and like, you know, you may not agree with every person in the fandom, and so like to tie yourself to that identity of like, oh, I'm a fan of this person, I'm a Swiftie, or I like Marvel, is to now associate yourself with people who you might disagree with on really big things, not just within the fandom, but like I think especially with how it affects like actual real people.
Now, I think when I originally set out to make this video, this was the part where I was going to sit down and tell you about how fandom is dead and reminisce about how it used to be. But that isn't the story I want to tell anymore. In all honesty, I don't believe fandom is dead. People are still out there partaking in the culture, even if there are some people doing it inappropriately about real people and others who are more financially motivated than they were before. It's just the landscape has completely changed. And to no one's surprise, it all comes back to social media, specifically TikTok. You see, TikTok's rise has caused a major shift for the biggest social media platforms in the world, especially the ones hosting fandom content like Instagram and Twitter, moving to algorithm-driven feeds from their original follower-focused feeds. To try and explain this to someone who wasn't on social media before algorithm feeds, basically, back in the day when you went on social media, you saw posts from the people you followed in order of when they posted them. So the newest posts were at the top, the last posts were at the bottom. And now it's all based on an algorithm which is guessing what you're going to like based on what you've liked before, and therefore the most likely post you're going to see first is one that you're going to give the biggest reaction to. Basically, it's all just about engagement and virality now. This has firstly led to the engagement of more niche fandom posts dropping drastically, because you have to be reaching a wide audience to be seen by everyone, which you're not going to achieve through the very nature of being niche. However, on the opposite end of the spectrum, there have also been instances of niche posts reaching more mainstream spaces, and more relevantly, less inclusive spaces, and it's never received well. They get scrutinized and criticized and shamed for making this sort of content. And therefore, if you're completely new to social media, joining for the first time today and thinking, oh, I would like to get into fandom and talk to people that are interested in this weird thing that I'm also interested into, that sounds great. Your first introduction to it is likely to be scrutiny, people looking down on it, and then exposure to these huge fandoms with all these problems and controversies, and in turn making you far less likely to want to get into it.
There's something else I want to make very clear. None of this is about drawing a line between real fans and new fans. That mindset helps no one, and frankly, it misses the point. Fandom isn't a club with a secret handshake that you only get in if you've been around since the early days of the messaging boards or posted on DeviantArt. It's a gathering place, a celebration, a shared playground where anyone who loves the story is welcome to show up, kick off their shoes, and join in. At the same time, it's okay to acknowledge that fandom has a history, one that shaped how things work today. Tropes, tagging systems, unwritten norms around transformative works, they all come from somewhere. And for newer fans, learning that history doesn't mean you have to earn your place. It just means you get to understand the roots of the community you are now a part of. Old fans should make space with grace, and new fans should enter with curiosity. Both are acts of love.
I think the thing to remember is that fandom existed before social media, and if social media was ever to die a horrible and miserable death, fandom will outlive it too. Fandom doesn't need social media to exist. However, I think given how social media seems to be getting more and more polarizing day by day, there's never been a more important time for these safe spaces to exist, to have that tight-knit, like-minded community of people around you to encourage you to create without judgment. It's so important. And social media needs to be an outlet for fandom. There needs to be a way for these things to work together. So while I'm sure fandom won't die, the only message I can leave you with is to encourage you, if you're passionate about anything, to try and partake in the daily rhythm of fandom culture. I just want to extend a special thank you to all my patrons in the shout out tier, including Kayla, who was in this video, AC, Maggie, Jacob, Jonathan, Ben, and Will. If you want to check out my Patreon and all the amazing awards we have over there, you can check it out, link in the description down below. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And yeah, you've already stopped watching, haven't you? But if you are still watching, thank you again. And I'll see you next time.